Hello and welcome to In Touch with Durham County. I'm Deborah Craig Ray, Assistant County Manager. I'm joined by my co-host, County Commission Chairman Michael Page.
Hello, Deborah. As our regular viewers know, we use this TV show to interview our Durham County department heads, staff, and community partners to share important information about many valuable programs and services.
Today, we are pleased to welcome District Court Judge Fred Battaglia and Assistant Public Defender Dorothy Hairston Mitchell of the 14th Judicial District, who will talk about a unique program in our court system, Durham's Drug Treatment Court. In March, our state held its first round of elections since implementing the voter ID law. Durham County Elections Director Michael Perry joins us to talk about how the process worked, some lessons learned, and more. We'll also talk about the upcoming elections in June and, of course, the major national and statewide elections yet to come in November. Chairman Page, let's begin our conversation.
Let's go for it. Judge Battaglia and Assistant Public Defender Hairston Mitchell, welcome to our show and thank you for joining us. So let's jump right in. Please tell our viewers a little about your background and your current role serving in the 14th Judicial District.
Thank you for having us. I am, as you stated earlier, Dorothy Hairston Mitchell. I am an Assistant Public Defender here in Durham County. I've been in that position for a little over 3 years now. Before that time, I was in private practice for about 10 years. So I've been with Drug Treatment Court, though, for about 8 years.
Right. What is a drug treatment court?
Drug Treatment Court is a specialty court in which we have the participants are persons who are on probation, and as a term and condition of their probation, they are getting treatment. It's not a traditional court by any means. It operates completely different than a regular court or traditional court setting. We convene every other week. We have a team of persons. It's a team approach as opposed to just a judge sitting on the bench, a district attorney, and a defense attorney, i.e. a public defender or just a private defense attorney. Other than that, or separate from, or apart from that, different from that, we have a team of persons who actually speak about each participant, how they're doing in their treatment. They go for substance abuse treatment. They may get mental health treatment. They go to NA and AA meetings. They have to meet with our case managers in our drug treatment court staff office. So we're in constant contact with them and getting what their progress is on probation.
Okay.
I can imagine it takes a great deal of coordination to have all of those support systems working on behalf of that defendant.
Absolutely, but we have a wonderful staff. Our case coordinator, as well as her assistant, they're wonderful with the county.
So do they have a good deal of experience in their particular roles?
Yes, ma'am, and they have some experience from prior to coming to drug court too that they brought to the table that works really well.
How long have we had a drug treatment court in Durham, and are there other North Carolina communities that have something similar, Judge?
Drug treatment court started in approximately 1999. However, in 2011, we were in a unique mode that we had to, the legislature took away the funding for the drug treatment courts, and so we're thankful that our county commissioners had the fortitude and the foresight to fund our adult treatment court, and they do, and we're very thankful. But you know, the ultimate purpose of drug treatment court is to prevent someone from re-entering both their addiction issues and committing further crimes. And the statistics show that 75% of the people that graduate from drug treatment court do not commit other future crimes. And so it is very successful. We've had across the nation 1.4 million people graduate from drug treatment court, and we have approximately 2,000 drug treatment courts across the United States. In Durham, one of the issues that, as Dorothy had mentioned, is we have housing issues, and so it's a combination of factors. It's hard to work on your addiction issue if you don't have housing, and we work closely with people to have housing. We need, as you all, the county commissioners and the city council know, we need affordable housing that is both safe for everyone and affordable, and so we're glad that that's at the forefront because that's a contributing factor to why people commit crimes. And the other thing about drug treatment court is it tries to reunite families that are broken through the addiction to try to stop the cycle. And ultimately, the statistics show us that for everyone that graduates, it saves the system about $13,000. So it's a very cost-effective system, and we're thankful we have that particular program in here. We'd like to expand it to other areas if possible, you know, in terms of opiate addiction and maybe DWI courts, which also are very high in addictive personalities, and we want to give them the help for our community, which is needed.
Well, that sounds really good. Now, I can imagine as we were thinking through the process of whether or not to continue it, there were probably some naysayers who say, really, why have a drug treatment court? Why not just incarcerate everyone?
I think incarceration in the long term, I came from a background of criminal defense, so I was a criminal defense lawyer for about 28 and a half years and have been on the bench about 15 months. I mean, the question is in everyone's best interest for someone to break the cycle of committing crimes. It is to it's society's benefit. It is to our youth. If you have someone go to prison and they have a family and they're growing up without either a mother or a father while they're incarcerated, the statistics show that, you know, they're going to have a harder time adjusting. And we have a problem in terms of our society, the school to prison pipeline, where someone drops out of school and goes into prison. And so the thought is that if you can deal with the addiction issue and the mental health issue, which we don't have a courtroom for that yet, but if we can deal with that issue before it becomes a problem, or after someone is charged, that it's to everyone's best interest to have working members of our society that are contributing members. It's to everyone's benefit, and drugs is a problem. We have to deal with it. And I'm of the opinion that you don't just throw everyone in prison. We have enough people in prison. We need people to be rehabilitated and to overcome their addiction.
And if I could add to that, what I would say to the naysayers is that what I used to think, and before I came on with drug treatment court, is that why can't they just stop? They have an addiction, but why can't they just stop using? Well, it's seriously an illness. And if people would see it as that, like in any other type of illness, they would see that they need to be treated. And like Judge Battaglia said, we are helping people to restore their families. We are helping people in the community to function in the community while they're working on their addiction issues, as opposed to going to a prison, becoming institutionalized, and having to come back and figure out how to live in the community.
Mm-hmm.
So who is the target population?
I think that's a great question. I think it's an expanding and contracting population, and obviously, you know, if you have resources, you're going to go into private treatment. A lot of people don't have that, and so, you know, you see a lot of poor people in drug treatment court who should be afforded the same opportunity to overcome their addiction, and so we see a lot of that. That's the target population, but the target population is one that we want to graduate. So that is our target population. In other words, you have to be a nonviolent offender to come into drug treatment court. You can't be someone charged with murder or assault or something like that. There has to be nonviolent, and generally those are issues that deal with drugs, in terms of they've been arrested for drugs over a repeated period of time, and they're now on probation, and they're looking at prison, and so they are granted this option to go in. And we get mostly referrals from criminal defense bar, and people, it's a volunteer program. Of course, one could argue it's a volunteer if you're going to prison, if those are your two options, but I think that they make their choices. I think I encourage all our citizens to come to a drug court graduation. We have one coming up on May the 20th that is open to the public to see, and it'll be a very emotional graduation, as they all are, because the two people that are graduating are very productive members already of our society. And I think drug treatment court is swift in that if there are consequences, they are swift. If you're charged with a crime, you have to wait to come to court for resolution. If you in drug treatment court and there's something that maybe they slip or something, or test positive, or don't turn in a sheet where they're gone to services or whatever, that it's dealt with swiftly, the consequence, whether it's going to jail for the weekend or something swift. And so I think that's a great benefit to someone who has an addictive personality and is suffering through addiction.
And the incentives are swift as well, if I could add that piece. We reward our participants for 30 days substance-free, 60 days substance-free, and so on until they actually graduate. So they get gift cards. We would love for the community to donate us some gift cards or Durham Bulls tickets, things of that nature that we can give to our participants when they're doing well. The other thing is that it builds their confidence when we're speaking to them about things that's going really, really well. A lot of people, all they have is to be able to say, I've been substance-free for 2 days or 30 days or 100. And we had somebody, I think last court, that was 300 and something days substance-free. And that's a big deal for a lot of people who have suffered from addiction.
So what are some of the challenges for the court?
I think challenges of the court are always divided up into a few factors, but one is resources. I think as the population of Durham grows, so will the people that are addictive to drugs. So I think that expanding it is a great thing. We need resources to do that. I think it's really linked in now. What we see is housing issues. Our housing issues are paramount because you need a safe place. Everyone needs a safe place to live, and the naysayers would say, well, going to prison is safe. Well, I would say it's not. And so I think keeping the nuclear family or the relationships together as long as we can. Addiction is a disease, and I firmly believe that, and I think it is, and we try to treat that, and our citizens are important to us in drug court, as they are to you all. But they are sort of at times the downtrodden. We've had some that are homeless. We have some that will be homeless, and the thing I like to see is to see them along their journey and try to assist them on their journey, and to see someone that's working while they're in drug court is a very moving experience, and employers have been very kind to let them continue at drug court because they have demands of time restraints, and so we have very many that are working in our community, and so they're contributing, and they're fighting their illness with support. And my view of drug court is that we are servants for them, that we're there to serve them and address the needs that they have, and they're all individual needs. And it's a very serious thing because we know, or at least from the court's perspective, that if they continue down the addiction issues or with their process or that behavior, that they have a high probability of dying. And so every day it's a very serious thing when we're in court, and it's very moving. When I started drug court, I never knew how it was going to go, and each drug court seems to take on a will of its own, and that's been my experience. And because I try to allow the participants to move some of the ones that are just starting their journey on this, to give peer pressure to try to assist them in their process. Whether sometimes I do it with an older person like myself who's mentoring a younger person while they're in court, to the simple things like be quiet, sit there, listen to what everybody's having to say, and work on those skills that an employer would need. So it's a multifaceted, but the ultimate goal is to fight the addiction, have them graduate, be a productive member of society, and have their family unit. Because some of these people that come to drug treatment court, their family has given up.
Yes.
That's true.
Well, we'd like to thank you both so much for doing this important work in our community. And I know you mentioned you have a graduation coming up. If you could take just a couple of minutes and talk about one case that you probably feel like really struck your heart more than others.
You go first, I'll go last.
So many. The most recent one that I could think of, we had a young lady that just graduated about a month ago. And when she first was placed on probation, she was kind of homeless, but not really. She was staying with a man that she shouldn't have been living with, and she ended up living in a hotel. And so we found her, got her linked up with the Cascade program, which is a program for women and children, because we found out that she was pregnant. And so at her graduation, I remember our coordinator speaking about this, and it was such a big thing because she was able to have her baby. She has another child, but she was able to have this baby knowing that that baby was going to be born substance-free. And she had a job. right after she had her baby, or before she delivered her baby, and then still maintains the job. She has her own house. So those are the kind of things that I think of. And then we had another gentleman, an older gentleman, I know you remember him. He had come into our court and had never had a cap and gown. And so we made sure that at his graduation he would be able to wear a cap and gown. And something so small that we could do to give them that confidence and make them feel good. It makes us feel good that they feel so good.
Awesome, Judge.
I think that the two that are getting ready to graduate are going to be very emotional for me. One is an older gentleman, and I will miss him, but to witness his struggle and his success, and he's working. And there's also a lady that's going to graduate, and she is now working, and she works, I believe, in her goal, and as she stated, her goal is to find work for young black men who that are similarly situated, that have addiction problems and are moving forward with their addiction, to find them jobs. And so I think why I say that is because, they get it, they're giving back. So that not only did they solve their issue, their struggle is still ongoing since they're recovering. They're recovering in their lifelong addiction issue, but they're giving back. So they struggled with it, they learned, and now they're servants to others. And so I don't know how you put a value on that, but it'll be very emotional when she graduates from it.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Well, we want to thank you both, and this has just been a very enlightening segment.
Absolutely.
Thank you both, too.
Can't wait to have you back in another year to kind of talk about how things are really going.
And we invite you both to come to graduation on May the 20th, and all other citizens, we'll put as many folks as we can in there. We'd love to have y'all.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
When we come back, we're going to take a brief break, and we're going to talk to our Director of Elections, Michael Perry. Thank you for joining us for this segment, and stay with us.
In 2016, when you go to the polls,
Bring your passion.
Bring your individuality.
Bring your wisdom.
And be sure to bring a photo ID.
you see, this election you'll be asked to show an acceptable photo ID at the polls.
The process is easy. When you go to the polls, simply bring your North Carolina driver's license or identification card, passport, military ID, Veterans Affairs card, or certain tribal IDs.
If you don't have an ID, or if you're unable to obtain one, there are still options for voting,
There are lots of acceptable IDs.
but only one you.
This election, be seen, be heard. If you don't have an ID, or if you're unable to obtain one, voting options are available. For more information on exceptions or for help getting a free ID, visit voterid.nc.gov or call 866-522-4723.
Welcome back. Michael Perry, Durham County Elections Director, joins us to talk about the recent March primary elections experience and upcoming voting opportunities. Chairman Page, let's continue our show.
Let's begin. Welcome back, Michael, to our show, and thank you for joining us today. What does the Board of Elections do for the community?
Our primary functions are to first maintain the voter registration database. We also have a geocode database that has all of the street address ranges in the county. Those two databases are critical to being able to conduct our most visible function, and that's to do all the elections in Durham County.
Okay. This March, North Carolina held its first partisan primary election in which voters were required to produce a photo ID in order to cast a ballot. Overall, how did your staff do in implementing this new law?
The photo ID really wasn't a factor in the election. It really didn't have too many problems with it. Majority of our voters came in with their ID in their hand and they were totally prepared. We attribute a lot of that to the effort the State Board of Elections did with their voter outreach program by just getting information out to everybody about the need to have a photo ID.
Was turnout greater than or less than you expected?
It was greater than expected.
For someone who did not vote in March, can you walk them through the process, and when they got to the poll table, how did the process work?
Actually, before they got to the poll table, the registration table, there was a new function in all of our polling places. We had a greeter this time, and the role of that greeter was to just prepare that voter for getting to the registration table by just making them aware that they would need to show a photo ID when they got to the table, and that gave them an opportunity to get that ID out and ready. So when they got to the table, that made the process a little faster.
Now, generally, how did voters react to this change?
Again, majority of the voters did not have a problem with it. Most of them, again, came in with their ID in their hand. Most of them had North Carolina driver's license, no problems at all. There were a few exceptions to that where some people didn't want to show their ID. We had one or two that didn't want to state their name and address because we had their ID. North Carolina law says that you must state your name, address, and party affiliation in a partisan primary election, and so they were still required to do that. The law also allowed for people that did not have a photo ID to declare a reasonable impediment. And we had a very few people use that route to state that they disagreed with the photo ID law.
Now, if someone came without the proper ID, how was that handled?
Okay. If someone came without the proper ID, first we would just try to find out if they had an ID. If they just left the ID in the car, left the ID at home, then their best option would be to just come back. Go get that ID and come back. If they didn't have an ID, and for some reason they didn't have an ID, and the reasonable impediment has lots of reasons, transportation, work schedule, schedule for child care, lost or stolen ID, that person could have declared a reasonable impediment and voted the normal ballot process.
Now, absentee voting, as I understand it, remains an option, and I think I understood that some groups were even encouraging people without an ID to go in that direction. Did you see an increase in the number of absentee ballots that came in?
No, we really didn't. No, not absentee by mail, really didn't. But that is a true statement that ID is not required to vote absentee by mail.
Okay.
But really didn't see a significant increase in it.
We have 57 precincts in Durham County. Who decides the location of the precincts and why are they sometimes changed?
We find polling places as best we can. And so if we need a new polling place in a specific area, we have several things that we do. Sometimes we get in the car and we drive around and try to find a building that has, adequate parking and adequate handicap accessibility, all those things. We also look at Google Maps to look for buildings with large footprints and large parking spaces to try and get that as a polling place. And once we identify a place that we think will work for us, we contact the owners and see if they're willing to let us vote there. Most of the time the answer is no, and so we kind of end up voting wherever we can get to that will allow us to be a polling place.
So Michael, when do we vote next and what is on the ballot?
Our next election is going to be a June 7th primary. What will be on the ballot, and this gets a little tricky, so first I will say what will be on all the ballots is a North Carolina Supreme Court Associate Justice contest. There's 4 candidates running for that, and that will be on every ballot in the county. In 4 precincts along the southern border of the county, precincts 33, 35.3, 53.1, 53.2, they will also have a 4th congressional district contest on it.
Okay. Will you have early voting available at that time, and where will the locations be?
Yes, we will have early voting for that election. The plan right now is to have early voting only at the Board of Elections office.
Now, people ask about the staff that you have, and I imagine it takes a lot of people to work 57 precincts. How do you hire those folk, and what kind of training do they go through?
Okay, first we'll just talk about the full-time Board of Election staff. We have 7 full-time positions, and during a small election like a municipal election, we will go from those 7 people to about 300 people. Precinct officials, the ones that work in our polling places on election day, the process for that is that they're recommended by the county political parties, and if they meet certain requirements, then the Board of Elections must appoint those people. So that's where we get the majority of our precinct officials from, is through that process of recommendations from the political parties. A small number of people we get from recommendations, people that come into the office saying, hey, I want to work, and we will get that information forwarded on to the parties to get them to add them to their list of people. That's a little different from early voting. Early voting, we get to place a ad in the newspaper or on the county website and recruit and hire those one-stop workers ourselves.
So if somebody wants to become a poll worker, how do they get in touch with you?
Just call the Board of Elections office, 919-560-0700. Let us know you're interested. We are looking for a lot of poll workers, people that have good computer skills. We're not looking for IT professionals or anything, but people that are just basically comfortable with a keyboard.
Okay.
We are using the electronic poll book now, so all of our election day precincts have computers. The process of looking up voters is very easy. I could probably train everybody in about a couple of seconds here. You enter the first 3 characters of their first name, space, first 3 characters of the last name, press enter, and it'll bring up a list of voters. So that's the process for a voter lookup.
Okay. Well, as we get closer to the 7th of June event, and of course we're thinking about the November big election, how can our citizens help you?
The most important thing citizens can do is, first, if you're not registered, get registered. If you are registered, check and make sure your information is correct. If you need to update your name, update your address, please do it before the election. And then if you go vote on election day, go to your polling place. There's a lot of information put out there where people are told that they can go anywhere and vote, and that's true. You can go anywhere and vote, but if you go to a polling place other than your polling place on election day, you're going to have to vote a provisional ballot. Provisional ballot is a good ballot, but that process takes a long time. This past election, we had a lot of provisional ballots. I think statewide, they set a record for provisional ballots, and part of that was because people didn't understand that it was a partisan primary election and how that process works. In a partisan primary election, if you're a Democrat, then you have to vote the Democratic ballot. If you're Republican, you vote the Republican ballot. But we had people in both parties that wanted to vote for candidates in the other party, and that meant voting a provisional ballot.
Well, again, we just want to thank you for continuing to give us voter education and to help our community know what they need to do as election laws change through the period.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you all.
Is there a phone number they can call to get information?
Yes, ma'am. 919-560-0700.
Okay. We want to thank you so much for what you do. Chairman Page, we've had a good show.
Another good informative show, and thank you, Deborah, and I can't wait to see what we will discuss next time.
Well, we've got a lot of things in the news these days, and so I'm sure we'll come up with something fun. On behalf of all of us at Durham County Government, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time with In Touch with Durham County. Cheers.